The left failed to stop the march in Leicester 12 days ago, and the front claimed it as a victory. At a meeting later that day, they looked ahead to their next march in London this coming Saturday.
They say that they'll stop us in London in 2 weeks' time. And, my friends, we all know, once again, they are going to fail. But these are the people in front of whom all the forces of the establishment, all the forces of respectability and authority have for the past 10 or 20 years been retreating like craven cowards and craven fools.
John Tyndall is chairman of the National Front. He claims that the party is growing, but he won't reveal its total membership.
And now there has risen a force representing the will of the British people to be great again, which has proved time and time again, and will prove time and time again in the days and the years to come, that come all the red mobs, come all the threats, come all the violence, come all the insults, we will keep marching on and they will stop us.
Despite the tragedy of Red Lion Square, the National Front policy is to keep on marching.
We have a completely clear conscience on these matters. No violence has been organized or promoted by us. Our members are never, or almost never, arrested. The disorder is promoted entirely by our opponents of the left wing, and we are not going to be stopped carrying out our right of free speech and free assembly by threats from the left wing.
But if the authorities came to you, Mr. Tyndall, and said, please, in the interests of law and order, do not march on Saturday, what would you say?
If the authorities come to us and order us as an instruction not to march, then of course we shall have to obey the law. If they merely ask us, advise us not to march, then I'm afraid no, we shall go ahead and march.
There's no doubting the extremist past of John Tyndall and the National Front's leaders. 12 years ago, he and Martin Webster were helping Colin Jordan set up the National Socialist movement in Britain. In 1962, Tyndall and Jordan were jailed for organising, training and equipping a paramilitary organisation, Spearhead. But in 1964, the National Socialists split and Tyndall and Webster formed the Greater Britain movement, which was specifically anti-black, anti-communist and anti-Jewish. In July 1964, the Kenyan president, Jomo Kenyatta, was assaulted in a London street. For this offence, Tyndall was fined and Webster jailed. In 1966, Tyndall was jailed for 6 months for illegal possession of a firearm, and in that year, he and Webster helped to organise the National Front.
When I was in my 20s, I was for a time associated with an extremist organisation, and this did turn out to be unwise, and I've always admitted it. I haven't tried to hide the fact. Many of my views have changed since that time, as they do.
Many of your views, of course, have remained the same.
Some of my views have remained the same, yes. I was always very patriotic, always a nationalist, and those views remain the same.
The National Front expresses its policy on immigration in this way. The repatriation by the most humane means possible of those coloured immigrants already here, together with their descendants and dependents. Your policy is to send them home?
To send them home where possible, or at least to resettle them, if there's not an immediate home available, to resettle them somewhere in the world.
You see, to so many immigrants, this is home.
Well, it may be, but that is not what is regarded by the majority of the population.
You talk of compensation, do you see, but what happens when money fails to persuade the family to go to a place thousands of miles from here?
We have made it perfectly clear that this is going to be something obligatory. It has to be.
You see, what sort of compulsion could you use? How can you make thousands of people go?
The normal compulsion that you exercise when you deport anybody. There are all sorts of parallels in recent history. Large numbers of Palestinian Arabs were uprooted from their homes in the Middle East. Huge numbers of Germans were uprooted from their homes in what is now, what used to be Germany, what is now Poland. There have been cases of people in China, Tibetans and so on. There are all sorts of cases of people that have had to be resettled by far more brutal means than we advocate applying to the immigrants in this country, which I think are eminently fair.
But you wouldn't suggest
methods.
that any of the three examples that you've just mentioned were ideal solutions to
No,
any
certainly
problem?
not, but they do at least show that these things this resettlement can be accomplished over a space of time.
You must see the practical problems here. If you're serious about this policy, you must see that it is going to cause untold suffering and hardship and anguish.
Of course I see the practical problems. Of course I see, and I've said to you, that it could cause suffering. You say untold suffering. I only say that there is going to be more suffering in the future if the problem is not tackled.
When you're in power, will you frown on mixed marriages?
Yes, we're not in favour of mixed marriages.
How would you discourage them?
Well, that isn't something that we've come to any conclusions about at the moment. There are not an enormous number of mixed marriages in this country at the present time, and we would attempt to educate people into an understanding of the bad consequences of mixed marriages.
What, at school level and...
Yes, if necessary.
Do you believe that the white man is ethnically superior?
Yes, undoubtedly. I'm not talking about the white man in relation to for instance, the Japanese or the Chinese, but I'm talking about the white man in relation to the Negro. And I think that the whole of what has happened in Africa since the white man left, or he nearly left, has borne out this.
Do you think that you're going to see the day when the National Front forms a government in this country?
I don't just think, I'm sure of it.
When we go into the coming election, we are going to say this to the people. You have had 30 years of incompetent government. We've had 30 years of incompetence. We've had 30 years of ineptitude. We've had 30 years of pathetic leadership. We've seen one of the greatest countries in the world dragged down so that it's now the poor sick man of Europe. This is the record of the old parties. This is the record of the little men who are now standing up and saying to the people, oh, don't take any notice of these extremists. Stand with us to preserve the system. The National Front and those extremists, we've got to stop them. What they're saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, is give us another 30 years to finish the job of wrecking the country. They've tried to stop us at Leicester. They've tried and they've failed. They say that they'll stop us in London. And, my friends, we all know, once again, they are going to fail. Come all the red mobs, come all the threats, come all the violence, come all the insults. We will keep marching on, and they will stop us!